you know.
Whoa. Cut.
That was awesome.
Ass. Okay.
I went for the fist bump.
Are we gonna fist bump? Okay.
Boom.
And then
Hey! In 3, 2, 1. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Toronto Dogcast, the podcast that helps dogs and dog lovers alike. Today I have the lovely Amy, who has joined me today to talk about dog anxiety, which is a pretty hot topic these days. I did a previous video talking about the symptoms of dog anxiety, but today we're going to be talking about Amy's story specifically with her dog Peanut and some of the experiences that you had. We're also going to be talking about some tips and tricks towards the end of the podcast on how you can address your dog's anxiety and some of the signs that you can look for in terms of whether your dog actually has the symptoms of anxiety, what anxiety actually is, and the rest of it. So let's get down to it. So
let's do it.
Why don't we talk about really quick for the folks out there? What is your perception of what anxiety is? So before we get into like all the symptoms and your story and stuff, what does it mean to you in terms of like how do you define anxiety?
For sure, yeah. So I mentioned that I suffer from symptoms of anxiety. So for me, what it is I mentioned I'm type A. Anytime I don't have control over a new situation, that makes me nervous. My heart starts to race a little bit. Mm-hmm. I'll talk a little bit faster. I'm nervous. I feel that stress, that sort of heat in your chest that you get when you're uncomfortable. And then it's also fear too. Sometimes fear of the unknown and the reaction that causes. And it really is an emotional, mental, physical reaction to whether it's uncertainty or new environment, fear, all of those kinds of things. Yeah,
absolutely. So it's really good. I mean, you pretty much hit it on the head. So the way I look at anxiety is it's a mild form of fear. And the way I usually define it to people is anxiety is usually the fear of the unknown.
Yeah.
It's like you're
Absolutely.
unsure about something. So for dogs, it's usually like they're approaching a situation where they're unfamiliar with that situation, or they're overwhelmed. So in Peanut's case, I mean, because
it's pretty much every situation.
Yeah, because of her past, right? Like, so think about her in that type of environment where, you know, she was kind of cut off from the world.
Yeah.
And then you rescue her from that environment, which is phenomenal. But then you're taking her into all these scenarios and these situations that are completely foreign to her.
Absolutely.
So it's a completely normal reaction. And what the body does is a reaction to what's going on in the mind, right? So fear or anxiety being a mild form of fear sets the mind into survival mode, believe it or not.
Yeah, and you can see that in Peanut's eyes that her head is racing.
Yep.
And she's trying to think through, almost she's trying to apply reasoning skills to what's happening, what's going on here. She's trying to figure it out.
Yeah.
A fun story recently, we put up a Christmas tree at my office, and Peanut, I don't think, has ever seen a Christmas tree. And she was down like this and very much on guard, trying to survive this ordeal of seeing a Christmas tree for the first time.
Yeah. So it's a legitimate thing where in a dog's mind, they'll go into fight or flight mode. So what's going to happen here is I'm uncomfortable with whatever situation that I'm in, whether it be going to PetSmart or walking down the street and seeing another dog. They're unsure of whether they're in danger or not because they've never really experienced it before, or there was some sort of trauma from the past that influenced them to think, okay, this might happen again, right? And so what the mind does is say, okay, get ready to do one or the other, to either fight to survive, basically, or flight, meaning like, I gotta book it. I gotta get out of here because I don't like it. And they don't know why they don't like it. It's just they don't like it. In extreme cases where anxiety is much more severe and it turns into like a legitimate fear issue, it's along the same spectrum. It's pretty bad. So any animal that gets into that type of situation where they feel cornered or pressured and they're unable to escape from it will
react in the exact same way.
Aggression, right? So it's not. So a lot of times people confuse aggression with a dog being like mean or whatever the case. But if you see it from their perspective, they're just trying to protect themselves because they don't know what's going to happen or whether they might be hurt or not. A lot of dogs who maybe get into a fight at a dog park or something like that in early age experience it as well. So it's totally understandable. Tell us and the lovely audience all about Peanut. Your beautiful, cute. I'm going to try to put a picture of her kind of like right here because she's like the cutest French Bulldog I've ever seen.
She's very cute. Yes. I like to think that she is the cutest French Bulldog that has ever lived. So yeah, my dog Peanut, she's 2. She has been with me for just over 6 months now. And Peanut came to me as a rescue from former life as a breeding dog. So in Peanut's previous life, I don't really know a whole lot about what her experiences were, but I do know that she lived in a home with exclusively French Bulldogs. She didn't really experience a lot of the outside world. So when I got Peanut, she and I started to do everything together. And as we started introducing Peanut into new experiences and new environments, it became very apparent to me that she does show a lot of the symptoms that I have heard you talk about in your podcasts of dog anxiety. So it's a little bit fitting, actually, that I have a dog with anxiety because I, too, suffer from some of the human symptoms of anxiety. I am an anxious person. I'm very type A and like to have control over every situation. So Peanut and I's story is really about how we have the shared experience of being anxious and how we deal with that together as partners in life.
Okay. So what were the first signs that indicated that something might be wrong?
Yeah. So the first day that I had Peanut, we had a very immediate bond. And I noticed that she couldn't be away from me for even 30 seconds without displaying nervous tendencies, whining a little bit, shaking. She was very insecure. So that was sort of my first sign. And then I guess the second sign would have been when I took Peanut to PetSmart for the first time. So I love to go to PetSmart. I do have another dog, Roscoe, who loves to go shopping for toys and outfits. So I was very excited to take Peanut to PetSmart for her first shopping experience, something that I very much enjoy. And we met another dog, not a French Bulldog, for the first time. And she displayed signs of aggression towards this dog. I could tell she was really uncomfortable in the situation, just very overwhelmed with everything that was going on around her, which she chose to express through aggression.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's a really common reaction, especially if a dog misses out on the period of life where they should be socialized. So early on in a dog's life, usually between, when they're 3 to 12 months old, they're very impressionable. That's when they're really building their social skills. That's really when they start to understand like the etiquette of
much like children.
Exactly. So if they miss out on that, which in Peanut's case, keep in mind, like Peanut has a sad story in terms of her past, but she's got a great home now with a family that absolutely loves her to death, including me. I love her. But if a dog misses out on that very impressionable time when they should be learning to interact with other dogs, it's a normal reaction for them to be like, ooh, what is this all about? Why don't we talk about the impact that it has? So you're a dog lover. You have a dog with anxiety. It's a new dog to you. Obviously, you care tremendously for this dog, and you know the history and you know her past. So that's kind of part of the story that's going along in your head. So what is it like to live with that type of anxiety in your dog?
So it's two sides of it. So part of the reason why I adopted Peanut was because I had moved to a new city. I, had changed jobs. There was a lot going on in my life that I was anxious about, and I was doing all of those things alone. So I missed having that companionship of having my dog. And so I thought, okay, I'm going to do it. I'm going to adopt a dog. So I sort of got Peanut to help me deal with some of the stresses that I was experiencing in my own life. So having my dog also go through kind of a similar transition to what I was going through, living in a new home, having a new environment. She comes to the office, so it's like she has a new job too. We're experiencing those things together. Mm-hmm. So I think that strengthens our bond, and that is the positive side of having to sort through these issues of my dog having these anxiety problems. On the other side of it, though, it can kind of have the opposite effect. Mm-hmm. So in certain situations, because I'm an anxious person, I will get nervous when I know that I'm walking Peanut down an unknown street. When we moved and we started to meet new dogs in our new neighborhood, I was constantly worried in my mind about, what are the neighbors going to think when my dog tries to attack their dog? How is she going to react to this new dog? How is she going to react to this new place? And it does make me nervous. Mm-hmm. So in that, I'm trying to train myself as I'm training Peanut and working with her to manage her anxiety, to also manage my reactions to situations. So it has made me a little bit more self-aware mm-hmm. in that sense. Of what is my reaction, and trying to control my reactions to stressful situations. At the same time, it can also heighten my anxiety sometimes, depending on what the situation is. So it's kind of that back and forth give and take that we deal with every day.
Right.
Yeah.
So a lot of times I'll talk to people about the cycle of anxiety, and it's kind of like the chicken or the egg. And sometimes it's really hard to tell where it starts. Which came
first.
Whether it's you or your dog who has anxiety first, what tends to happen is you become anxious because you're worried about your dog, which is like, it comes from a good place.
Absolutely.
But then what happens is, let's say you're walking down the street and you see another dog. That what goes through your mind are all the scenarios.
Oh, yeah.
What can go wrong? Or
absolutely.
How's my dog going to react? Or when Peanut saw this big dog, she did this, but when she saw this dog, she did that. And all these things start going through your head.
Yeah, and sometimes that's happening for me before it's happening for Peanut.
Right. And then that triggers the anxiety in Peanut.
Yes.
Which then reinforces your anxiety. And
around we go.
And around you go.
Yeah.
Walk us through that. So before you and I start talking about our dogs and Peanut's issues and that kind of thing, walk us through kind of what you would go through in terms of like coping with that type of scenario. Because obviously you got to walk her.
Yeah.
Every single day.
Every day. Yeah. So this isn't my proudest story, Joe. And,
it's okay.
But you know what? I think it's something that people can probably relate to, because I was really trying to just straight up avoid putting her in situations that would make her stressed. And I thought that was the right thing to do for her at the time. So as you mentioned, I'd have to walk her every day.
Mhm.
We lived in a nice community where there's lots of residential streets. I started to learn on our walks where the other dogs lived.
Mhm.
What times of day do we see other dogs? And I was thinking in my mind, okay, at 5 o'clock, Joseph down the street walks Justice. So I won't walk Peanut until 5:30 so that we don't run into Justice and have an issue. I would take certain streets knowing that the dog who sits in the window and barks at everyone lives on this street. So we'll pass that street and we'll take the next street up.
Mhm.
And I thought by avoiding the issue that I was actually saving her stress.
Yeah, and intuitively it makes sense,
Yeah,
right? Because that's what we would do,
that's what I try to do.
right? So let's say you have anxiety in certain social situations, maybe like a party where you don't know anyone.
Yeah.
Well, the easiest way to address it is
Don't
just
go
to
to the party.
I'm just not going to go
It's not going to go.
because I don't feel comfortable in that type of situation.
Yep.
And so it makes sense that people apply that to their dogs. And the interesting thing I want people to notice about your story is how much effort goes into it.
A lot
Because
of effort.
I've heard the most outlandish stories about tactical planning to avoid.
I changed
certain-
my bedtime.
Really?
I changed my bedtime. So I used to go to bed at 11 o'clock,
Mhm.
but I realized Justice walks at 10:30. So instead of walking Peanut at 10:30, I would walk her at 11:15.
Right.
Yeah, I changed my whole day to try to accommodate it because I thought it was what was best for her.
But see, in a way, that's as human beings, as animals, like that's what the mind is trying to do. So in
I
a
was trying to
survival
adapt. Yeah.
in a survival situation, if you're unsure or worried, or if something is a potential danger
Mhm.
in one shape or another,
Yep.
what do? You just avoid it. And that's the survival mechanism of anxiety. So anxiety does have a purpose in terms of our survival instincts, but the reality is that there are no legitimate threats. You know what I mean? In terms of you're not going to get hurt by going to a party or by going shopping with your dog. It shouldn't create an anxious state of mind. But it's interesting. That's the go-to for pretty much everybody in terms of they see a symptom and associate it with that scenario, and then they're like, okay, well, the easiest thing to do is just avoid it, and away you go.
Yeah.
But what happens when you avoid a situation that creates anxiety?
It never gets resolved.
It never gets resolved, and in fact, it makes it worse because it intensifies.
Yeah, the longer she would go without experiencing interaction with another dog, the worse her reaction would be when she did interact with another dog.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And keep in mind that dogs like us are social beings, meaning that humans need to socially interact to be well balanced as human beings, right?
Yeah.
So we need a certain degree of social interactions to stay mentally healthy. Dogs are the same. So a dog that goes without social interaction is missing something from their life, and it creates imbalance. It creates frustration, usually. Let me ask you this question. So if Peanut would see another dog, what was the first kind of thing that you would notice about her behavior?
The first thing that I would notice is that she would just stop, put the brakes on,
Okay.
stop dead.
Okay.
And my interpretation of that was, again, thinking about how I react, you're stopping to take stock of that situation and try to assess this interaction and which way is it going to go.
Mhm.
Then what would happen once she stops, the other dog would start to come because they want to interact and meet and probably play.
Mhm.
And when she stopped and another dog was coming towards her, she would interpret that as a threat. So her next reaction would be to lunge aggressively towards that other dog.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so that, again, is normal. So if a dog is anxious about other dogs, it's a matter of, I want my space.
Yeah.
And if you are going to approach me and even threaten to come into my space, well, what's the easiest way for me to create space? I'm going to make this space by being aggressive or by running away. Now, if your dog's on leash, they don't really have that option to run away. So,
well, and Peanut's a bulldog, so she's not running away from anything.
I mean, they're tough as nails, those dogs. I mean, like, she's like this big and adorable, but no joke. Like
22 pounds of pure muscle and fat and just in your face.
Yeah, she's no joke. There's a lot of breeds that are super cute, but they're no joke. Like they'll stick up for themselves and they'll get into it with any dog. So the other thing that's really interesting is the internal dialogue, the story that we tell ourselves when our dogs are experiencing these types of situations.
Yeah.
Because as human beings, what do we try to do? We justify it.
Yeah.
We have a conversation about what our dogs are thinking and feeling and why. I don't know how many times I've heard the line, well, my dog just doesn't like big fluffy dogs.
Yeah.
But she likes little dogs.
Well, and I told you that when we first started working together. Peanut likes French Bulldogs, and she's okay with small dogs, but she doesn't like anybody bigger than her.
Right. So there's some sort of that dialogue going on. And whatever it is, whether it's, going to PetSmart or other people, maybe going to touch them. Was she okay with other people?
She's always been great with other people. She loves people. My dog would be the first dog to be abducted if someone just said, "Come here, I have chicken."
Yeah.
See you later. She loves everyone. Yeah.
And she's super cute, so who wouldn't want to steal her? I tried to steal her, but I was unsuccessful. Again, that's a human coping mechanism, is that we try to understand our dog's behavior and then we try to justify the things that they're doing.
Absolutely.
And create this internal dialogue about, this is what my dog is feeling, this is what's going through her head. And this.
Well, I also felt like I had to explain her feelings to other people as we would encounter people on our walks and she would behave aggressively. I think partly because of my own anxiety. I don't want them to think that I'm a bad dog owner or that my dog is naughty. So I try to explain, oh, you know what? She just really doesn't like big, fluffy dogs. It's Wednesday. She's had a hard week, things like that.
Peanut didn't have her coffee this morning, so she's a little grumpy.
Exactly.
It's amazing the types of I don't want to say excuses, but the types of stories
we tell stories
that we tell ourselves.
Absolutely.
Right? Because we need to internalize what's happening, even though we don't really understand from an animal standpoint what's going on. We need to justify. So that's also another interesting point is how it makes you feel.
Yes.
In terms of interacting with the public or other dogs. Mm-hmm. And that sense of, you mentioned embarrassment or just like
you feel
being
guilty.
Perceived in a negative way. Like
Absolutely.
You're a bad person.
Yeah.
Because your dog is showing signs of aggression.
Yeah.
That's also part of that cycle.
It is. Absolutely it is.
So we've talked about kind of how it feels and let us know in the comment section if you've experienced this before, but I've heard this like 1,000 times.
Yeah.
And it's really stressful. Like I can't express to people just how stressful it is to do something as common or mundane as taking your dog for a walk and then what's going on in your head and how it makes you feel. Because I'm very protective over my dogs.
Yeah.
And because
most people are.
Absolutely. Because you love them. They're a part of your family. Imagine if somebody said something negative.
Yeah.
Right? About a member of your family. You wouldn't take to it very well.
I wouldn't.
Which I'm not recommending you confront anybody, but
I am.
Maybe for those people who actually are seeing dogs with some of these symptoms, if they can understand a little bit more of what's going on, maybe they won't judge, or maybe have a bit more empathy in terms of like understanding what other people are going through, because obviously it's not pleasant for you, and it's not pleasant for your dog, and it's not pleasant for the other dogs or people that are experiencing this, but they just don't understand. So it's the purpose of this podcast is to help people understand what's going on.
Yeah. And what I found interesting was as soon as I started to tell people, she's a rescue and I identify that this is an issue. We're working on this. Here's some things that we're doing to improve her behaviors, working with a dog whisperer, a professional behavioralist in dog behavior. People started to really have a lot of respect for that and understanding, and the empathy that you're talking about. They were empathetic to the fact that she's going through something and that she's just trying to resolve her issues, because everybody can relate to that.
Yeah, totally. I mean, nobody goes through their life without experiencing some sort of worry, anxiety, stress, pain, mental illness, whether it be depression.
If there are those people, I don't want to know them.
Anyways, like, I don't want to know them.
I don't want to know them.
That's like so harsh. It's like, those people can
if
just
you have
go.
No issues, get out of here.
Everybody has issues, whether they are perceived or not, right? So it's just one of those things. I tell people all the time, it is so common. Like, it is so common.
Yeah.
But when you're going through it, you think your dog is the weird one. Yep. Your dog is strange because it's exhibiting these types of symptoms, and everybody else's dog is fine, right?
Yeah.
Or they're not like as bad.
Well, and I've never had a dog who I didn't have from a puppy. Right. So I didn't really know what that was going to be like. And I've always had the opportunity to raise my dog the way that I wanted to raise the dog, and always had control over that situation. Okay. So I always thought, this is how dogs are. This is how dogs are supposed to be. And I think we perceive dogs as just these loving creatures. And when your dog isn't displaying that, it can be difficult to deal with.
Yeah, absolutely. So the good news is that it's I shouldn't say easily. It's depending on the dog and depending on how severe the anxiety is and the circumstances that you live in, the rest of it, it's something that can be addressed. The important thing is that out of pure coincidence, we work together, and obviously we both love dogs, so that's going to come up in the conversation.
Yeah.
And one of the things I try to reassure people with is that it's something that can be addressed, and it's something that you can improve on. So, like we were talking about the cycle of anxiety, you get more anxious because you're anticipating what might happen. Your dog then picks up on that, becomes more anxious, and the whole thing repeats itself. You can reverse that cycle, meaning that you can become less anxious by helping your dog to become less anxious. So dogs are on this earth for many, many reasons, not just to be objects of our affection. They can actually help us if we take the time and energy to help them, right?
Yeah.
So one of the questions I got from Instagram was, if you're an anxious person, does that mean that your dog's going to be anxious as well? And it's not a clear yes or no, because you can be anxious in certain parts of your life, but be very comfortable with your dog. And that won't cause anxiety in your dog. So the answer to that question is much more, how are you with your dog? So picture yourself out in public, walking down the street with other dogs around you or approaching you. How do you feel, right? And becoming self-aware is all about understanding how you're feeling first, and then understanding that that's going to influence how your dog feels.
Yeah.
So we started chatting,
We did.
and I fell in love with Peanut instantly. I tried to steal her many, many times. It was unsuccessful.
Anytime Peanut would go missing, I knew right where to find her.
She was usually in my office,
Usually.
on my lap,
Yeah.
getting cuddles. But so I wanted to help out, and we started just doing a little bit here and there.
Yeah, basic stuff.
Basic stuff.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the solutions, because I think that's what a lot of people are interested in. Now, keep in mind, we're going to be talking about Amy and Peanut specifically. So these are not blanket statements that are going to apply to every single dog, but a lot of the things that are fundamental will be of value to other people.
Yeah, I think you can still take the logic behind it and apply it to your own situation, hopefully.
Hopefully, definitely.
Yeah.
For sure. So the first thing is just understanding the self-awareness part.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, and I think that's really important because your podcast is about dogs and dog behaviors and helping dogs, but it's so much about helping people and human behaviors as well. And until you identify which, I had to identify that I was part of the problem, that I was contributing to the problem, and that I had to sort through my behaviors and retrain myself as well too. So it's important for people to recognize that.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's not about blame. Right? So it's
No,
about
not
accountability.
At all. Accountability. Yeah.
100%.
That's what I would say.
Right? So if you are sitting there going, oh, well, now I feel terrible because I'm making my dog feel anxious and that's causing all these problems, that's not it at all.
No.
Okay? It's just about understanding how you're feeling in certain circumstances. It doesn't mean that one day you're just going to turn the switch off and be fine with it. It just means as soon as you can identify it, then you're empowered to do something about it.
100%.
Okay.
Yeah.
So good. So let's talk about what Peanut did in terms of her first steps to overcoming her anxiety.
Okay.
Right? So when you and I first talked, you were like, okay, Peanut just doesn't like these types of dogs unless they're a French Bulldog, and I told you that was crap.
I thought she was racist.
Dogs don't perceive each other that way. Human beings do, but one dog can't tell if another dog is a 150-pound Malamute or a 20-pound Chihuahua. They don't discern each other in those ways. They discern each other in terms of scent.
Yes.
They definitely understand body language. So they're having a conversation through their body language for the most part, especially from a distance.
Yeah.
And then they use scent. Now, because Peanut has a squished in, super cute and
super squished. She's
she
excessive
snorts
squish.
and
Yeah.
it's adorable. However, it does put her at a disadvantage in terms of the average dog has quite a long snout, and therefore their sense of smell is very powerful. But for dogs like bulldogs, bulldogs, Frenchies, Bostons, pugs, anything with the boxers as well, anything with the short pushed in snout. What tends to happen is they use their eyes and their ears a lot more.
I think that's important for people to identify, because I wouldn't have thought of that until you told me.
Well, it's very rare that a physical part of a dog's anatomy contributes to what's going on in their head. But it's important to understand that it's not because they don't want to use their nose. It's just they have to be much, much closer.
Oh, yeah. Peanut has to be right up next to the thing that she wants to smell.
So if you think about Peanut's snout, it's that long. Whereas a normal dog is much, much bigger, right? Yeah. So if you do have one of those breeds, it's something to consider. But,
absolutely.
So we wanted to introduce her to other dogs.
We did.
And she came for boot camp.
She did.
And I had a ball working with her. So the first dogs that she worked with were my dogs.
Yes.
And she fell in love with them straight away.
Which was mind-blowing to me. I was very, very nervous.
that's also normal because A, you don't want anything to happen to your dog.
Yeah.
And B, you don't want anything bad to happen to my dogs because you'd feel responsible, correct?
I would, yeah.
Right. So the whole thing about boot camp, I don't want to get too much into the minutia of it, but it's basically taking a dog out of their normal circumstances and away from as many influences as possible, and then putting them into a controlled situation where I know I'm super calm and chill around dogs. I know that my dogs are super calm and chill. There is a completely new environment. So it's like a fresh start in a way.
Yeah.
Where there's no reference point.
Which is something that I was nervous about as well, because my perception was Peanut doesn't do well in new situations. And also that I wasn't going to be there.
Right. So the ideal situation is to work with the owner and their dog at the same time.
Yeah. Which we had done a little bit.
We had done a little bit of it, but the whole purpose of boot camp is to accelerate the process and do some of the heavy lifting. And to prove. And so the other reason why I do boot camps with dogs that are maybe a bit more severe is to break the cycle.
Yes.
So if you can break the cycle of anxiety and show the people a different story, you can replace the one that they've had previous to that. And so my whole thing with Peanut is like, I'm going to walk her with my dogs. I'm going to introduce her to lots of dogs. And then eventually we went to the dog park.
You did.
And she was off leash and playing with other dogs within, I think, 3-4 days.
I know. I couldn't believe it. I was so proud of her.
Oh, and so this is the good news part of when we started the story, we talked about like how bad it makes us feel because we don't understand what's going on, and you know, you start to avoid other dogs and then make excuses and get embarrassed. But now that the first time somebody sees their dog in a situation that used to make them anxious, but instead of being anxious or aggressive or nervous, they're having fun. Yeah. And they're just being a dog.
I cried.
Did you really?
I did, yeah. I was so proud of her. It made me so happy. And it was like a fresh start for me too, because it made me believe that the problem really was something that we could solve by working together at it. So
yeah, absolutely. So what it does is it gets you off that cycle of negativity, and it says, okay, we're going to start a new cycle.
Yeah.
Meaning that you saw that it was possible. You saw not just that it was possible, but you also saw the impact on Peanut.
Yeah, that she was loving it. She was so happy.
Yeah, and just being a dog. Mm-hmm. I know it sounds a little strange because it's nothing really special, but when your dog has anxiety issues, they're not acting normally.
No.
They're doing things that are kind of out of character. Do you know what I mean? Because they're riddled with the anxiety, so it dominates them. Mm-hmm. So they're not able to relax and play and sniff and run around and do all the things that most of us take for granted. Let's be frank.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think of those things, you know, in my dogs as being special, but anybody who lives with a dog that has anxiety doesn't experience them. Mm-hmm. And so it's moving when they see it. Mm-hmm. So that then creates a new cycle of, okay, now there's hope. Now there's like something to work towards. And that then relieves some of your anxiety.
For sure.
Right?
Yeah.
And you can start moving in the right direction. Now, keep in mind, it's not an on-off switch, okay? Just because a dog comes to boot camp and is able to let go of their anxiety doesn't mean it's gone. Mm-hmm. Because when they go back home and they're back in their old environment and they're with their old family, it's very common for the symptoms to come back.
Yeah, it's like when you go on vacation and you're having a lot of fun, you're really relaxed, and then you get back to work on Monday and you're just stressed again.
Exactly. The important thing is to start moving forward at some point. So whether whether it's you're doing this kind of stuff on your own or you engage help, which I always recommend, because having somebody come in and help you creates this kind of like security. So
Yeah.
it's like, I like to think of myself kind of like a security buffer. It's like I'm there to provide you with support. I'm there to tell you it's okay. I'm there to show you, what to do and how to do it, and reassure you that there's no need to be anxious. There's no need to be worried.
And you do the same thing for the dog.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then eventually what happens is that the human takes over. So Amy takes over.
I'm the human.
Exactly. So you take over. So when you're walking down the street, you're like, okay, I need to first understand how I'm feeling. Then I need to understand that it's okay. Like it doesn't mean that if I see another dog coming down the street that there's something bad is going to happen, that I'm just going to treat it as a new experience and then move forward. Good. All right. So we're going to talk more about Peanut's story in a bit, but we did have a question from the interwebs.
Okay.
All three of them.
Great.
And that was, can you use CBD oil to treat anxiety? And that's from Sir James the dog. Very formal.
Sir James.
Sir James. Instagram handles are so fascinating these days.
Peanut is Peanut in the 6.
I'll put
shameless plug.
I'll put her Instagram thing right here. It's super cute. So treating a symptom is different than addressing the underlying issue.
Yeah, I think that's important to distinguish.
So treating the symptoms versus treating or addressing the problem. So
using CBD oil.
So you can use CBD oil. I know a lot of people have used it for separation anxiety or like during a thunderstorm. You can get thunder jackets, which are very tight-fitting jackets to help make them feel more comfortable during a thunderstorm or fireworks. But the important thing is, just like a cold, like the impact of addressing a symptom with medication or different gimmicks or apparel or whatever is that you actually make it worse, because I can address a symptom and make the symptom go away temporarily, but then as soon as you don't have CBD oil or that jacket on, the anxiety's back. So addressing the anxiety is much more of a long-term fix where your dog is going to be able to live a stress-free life. And that's the other thing that we didn't talk about, is just how stressful it is for your dog to be anxious in those types of common situations, because it happens all the time. So anything to do with dogs is magnified. So you and I deal with stress all the time. I'm sure you guys do too. And
I have a couple martinis. I feel a little less stressed.
Exactly. So you
self-medicating.
You can cope.
Yeah.
But with dogs, because they lead such short lives, any type of intense stress has a much more negative impact on their health.
That makes sense.
Long term.
Yeah.
One Boston Terrier I was working with.
Pepper.
Her anxiety was so bad that she was actually prematurely aging. Like she was actually aging much, much faster than her actual age, just because she was under such huge. It is sad. However, there's a good news story about it, right?
Absolutely.
So doing something about it is huge. So I have some tips for you.
Right.
Okay. So the number one thing is, if your dog is experiencing any of these symptoms, the first thing to do is to kind of acknowledge that there's a problem. The second thing to do is to become self-aware. And if you're anxious and your dog's anxious when you're around your dog, then just understand that there's things that you can do. Don't avoid it. That's the number one tip that I have. So when you're talking about a dog who's experiencing anxiety through aggression towards other dogs, the solution is actually to put them around other dogs in a controlled fashion. So starting with, if you're doing it on your own, distance. So walking your dog with other dogs in the same proximity will help them to build relationships and to understand that nothing bad is going to happen. Mm-hmm. And what the walk does is it gives the mind an opportunity to focus on something else. So when Peanut did the thing where she stopped and another dog is coming towards her, her mind is stuck. Her mind is fixated on that situation because she's not moving.
Nope.
But if she's walking, then it gives the mind something else to do. Think of it as almost like a way of distracting the mind or to be able to get it moving forward again. Mm. And that will then create a positive experience. So Peanut walking with another dog or your dog walking alongside another dog, even if their initial reaction is aggressive, what it'll do is dissipate. And what they'll do is from a distance, and we're talking like anywhere from like 6 to 10 feet, like plenty of space, but you're both walking along together.
Yeah.
It'll give them the opportunity to experience a social situation and experience being around another dog without the intensity of a face-on-face meeting. That's a no-no. You don't want to do that with aggressive dogs. So walking in parallel or walking in tandem is always a good idea. And what that'll do is it'll help calm you down too.
Yeah.
Right? So
gives me an activity too. It's always good.
Exactly. And so all you want to do is replace the story that's going on in your head of Peanut's going to attack this other dog, or this other dog's going to attack Peanut, or whatever other negative scenario that's going on in your head is then replaced by, hey, I'm walking alongside another dog, and my dog's walking alongside another dog, and nothing bad is happening. Right? Yeah. So you're proving it to yourself and you're proving it to your dog. Now, if you're going to do that, choose the right dog to walk alongside.
Yes.
Okay. Try to pick the chillest, calmest dog that you can. Figure that out before you go for the walk and plan it out. So one of the things that I bring to the table is setting up exercises. So you're basically taking the scenario in which yourself or your dog, or probably both of you, are experiencing anxiety, and you create an exercise that mimics that scenario, and you do it over and over and over again, and that builds confidence slowly over time. So anxiety doesn't go from like here to like here the next day. What it does is it trails off slowly. So as you become more confident and more relaxed, so does your dog, because you're proving to yourself and you're proving to your dog that it's okay, it's safe, nothing bad is going to happen, and you're relieving the fear of the unknown.
Yeah.
You're taking that aspect away, which is what is addressing anxiety in the first place.
Yeah.
Okay? So that's a huge tip. The other thing is just to breathe. It's amazing. I know this is a terrible tip. People are going to be like, okay, yeah, great tip, buddy. Breathe. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I think I'd rather take CBD oil.
Well, who wouldn't? I mean, let's be frank. That's a lot more fun. However, what happens when people become anxious, believe it or not, is they will stop breathing.
Yeah, and Peanut does. When she stops everything.
Yeah.
And I'm like that too. I'm just there like...
Because you don't know. And that's your mind telling your body to get ready.
Yeah.
Everything tenses up and that adrenaline starts flowing.
Mm-hmm.
And so just taking a breath helps quite a lot. If you're in that type of scenario where you see another dog, or you see a scenario where you become anxious, or you think your dog's going to become anxious, the first step is, like we said, become self-aware. Mm-hmm. The second step is just to breathe, is just to take that moment to understand that, okay, I just need to do something to help me to relax. And that sense of relaxation, if you can practice it, and the key is practicing. Because if you're only waiting for these types of situations to happen in your day-to-day life, it's never really going to
You're never going to be prepared for them.
No. There's always this certain amount of uncertainty.
Yes.
Anybody who plays a sport or a musical instrument is going to understand the concept of practicing something.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to get better at it, you just practice it. And you start off easy, right?
Yeah.
And then you increase the level of difficulty. So that first step where you're walking Peanut or your dog with another dog and you're 10 feet away from each other, well, that's going to make it easy at first.
Yeah.
And then slowly you can move them closer and closer together to the point where you can actually start walking them with each other, building those bonds and relationships, and that will then translate.
It's like you start by playing Freebird before you move up to Stairway to Heaven.
Okay. I don't even know what those things are, but okay. I'm not that hip these days. But yeah, it's you want to set yourself up for success.
Yeah.
And you want to
because failure is just going to make you more anxious.
100%. Amy's smart.
That's what they tell me.
That's about all that we have today. And the most important thing is understanding that there are solutions out there, that you're not alone, that your dog
Definitely not.
isn't anything.
Your dog's not weird.
Yeah, it's okay.
Yeah.
But do something about it, get some help, seek out assistance if you need it, and then understand that it can go away and that your lives will be so much better. Afterwards, right?
Yeah, and there's a lot of resources out there, obviously, on the internet. And there's a lot of great communities. I think the community that engages with this podcast and on your Instagram can definitely be a great source of comfort and just even support. You know, there's lots of people out there.
Yeah.
So
Don't do it alone. Just understand that there's other people out there who are experiencing the same thing. You don't have to do it alone. Like, pick somebody who's a calming influence on you to help you out with this. And they can provide that extra little bit of support just to say, hey, you know what, Amy, it's okay. Just relax. We're doing this together. It's going to be fine. If Peanut makes a mistake, we'll just do it again.
Yeah.
Until she gets it.
Thank you for having me. I had a great
time. Did you have fun?
Yeah.
Was it good? Do you think people will provide value?
I hope so. I hope it helps a couple people to understand their dog better, especially people who are rescuing a dog for the first time. And I know a couple people said to me, why are you rescuing a dog? They're going to come to you with a bunch of problems. And I think it deters people from actually saving a dog who really just needs some time and effort and love and support.
You'd be amazed at how quickly it can happen. I mean, Peanut here was here for a 4-day boot camp. And within 4 days...
Even 15 minutes at the office on lunch break, the difference that's made for her is huge. So we've been just investing that small amount of time. It's kind of like when you invest in going to the gym for yourself, for your health, investing in your dog's health, that little bit every day.
It's a great way to look at it. It's an investment of time that's going to pay off in dividends. So think about the scenario of changing your schedule.
Yeah.
To go to bed at different times or to avoid certain neighborhoods or whatever. Like, think of how much more convenient it's going to be when you have the freedom to take your dog to PetSmart, to take your dog to the dog park, to walk down the street without worry of a fight or an incident or an argument with another dog owner. Like, these are all things that affect your day-to-day life. And I can't tell you how much of an impact it's going to have for the future of your dog as well.
100%.
So any other parting words or advice?
No, I don't think so. Just thanks for tuning in. Thanks for having me on the podcast. And hopefully I can come back sometime with Peanut. Yeah. Maybe we'll do a follow-up on Peanut's progress.
Well, Amy is a fantastic guest, and we're planning on maybe even another podcast about dogs in the office. So
dogs in the office.
So we'll get Peanut back. But I'll put See, I always leave this space here to superimpose pictures.
Oh, can we superimpose her Christmas portrait?
Sure, if you send it to me.
All right, perfect.
Until next time,
if you love your dog,
take them for a walk. Until next time, take care. Thanks so much. That was awesome.
Okay.
I went for the fist bump.
Are we gonna fist bump? Okay.
Boom.
And then
hey!